the Start Your Own Business podcast. Hear inspiring startup stories and get reliable expert advice on how to start your business and get off to the best possible start. Brought to you by Startup Donut, helping small businesses succeed.
Hi there, thanks for joining us. You're listening to the Start Your Own Business podcast. My name's Fiona Pryor and I'm your host. Now, it's often said that the people who work for your business are its most valuable asset. Certainly, their skills, knowledge, experience and hard work is crucial if your business is to succeed. And you need to start by recruiting the right people in the first place. But you also need to make sure they get the right training so they can do their jobs and to maximise their value to your business. There are many options when it comes to training your people, and this can include apprenticeships, skills boot camps and higher technical qualifications. But what do each of these options involve, and how much will they cost your business? My special guest today is Natalie Cahill, CEO of work-based training provider Fairport. Fairport delivers apprenticeships, skills boot camps, higher technical qualifications and commercial training to business owners, employers and employees. Natalie's joining us today to explain how you can use funded training and upskilling to future-proof your business and to ensure its ongoing success. Before we meet Natalie, let's find out a bit more about Fairport.
Whether you're an employer looking to boost your team's performance or someone who's ready to take your career and business to the next level, Fairport Training has you covered. Fairport is a trusted provider of apprenticeships, skills boot camps and higher technical qualifications in areas like leadership and management, human resources, digital marketing, data analysis and project management. They make learning flexible, practical and tailored to real-world needs. With Fairport, you won't just get a certificate. You'll gain knowledge and skills that stick, taught by friendly, experienced trainers who are with you every step of the way. It's training made simple with results that matter. And the great news is that many of our courses are supported by government funding. So why wait to upskill yourself or your team? Visit fairport.co.uk to learn more and see how Fairport can help you unlock new opportunities and future-proof your business. That's fairport.co.uk, your go-to provider for funded skills training across the country.
So it's now time to meet our guest, Natalie Cahill, CEO of work-based training provider Fairport. Thanks for joining us. Nice to speak to you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
I wanted to start by asking whether it's possible to ever overstate the importance of training for businesses.
Yeah, so we absolutely think training is so crucial to business success. So whether you're a really large organisation, perhaps you're working for yourself or a small organisation, training is absolutely crucial. If you think about the pace of change at the moment with technology and the way that people's roles do evolve over a career, nobody is standing still and having really a job for life anymore. So training is so important if you're going to stay ahead of that curve as an individual, but also as a business. So business is changing. Our customers are changing all of the time. So actually, as a business owner, you need to be thinking about what do we need now and what do we need in the future so that we can keep in touch with our customers and make sure that our staff are performing. And there's also, of course, the really important people side of it, where if you are investing in your team, you're much more likely to recruit really good people because they're, really good people want to see that they're going to be invested in. And they're much more likely to stay with you if they feel supported, motivated, they feel like they can do a good job and they've got the training that they need. Even if they don't want to move on to a new role. But if they do want to move on, most people are going to want to see that there are progression routes and succession plans in place. So training needs to just go all across the business of what skills do you need and how are you going to really invest in your people.
Yeah. And in terms of, identifying what training people need, how can businesses go about identifying that?
Yeah, so if you're a really large organisation, you typically have a learning and development team who would be responsible for looking at what are the skills that we've got now and what are the skills that we need in the future. But even if you don't have that team, you can do that quite simply just by using your traditional SWOT. So you think about your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So if you look at the strengths of your team at the moment and also perhaps the weaknesses in your team, so that might just be yourself, of course, as well. But if it's a big wider team, you can be looking at actually where are our gaps at the moment, and how could we possibly train those gaps or maybe recruit to fill those gaps. The second side of that is, of course, the opportunities and the threats. So if there are developments in your industry, changes that are coming to regulation, perhaps that there's a new customer type, there's a new product that you want to launch, you need to be thinking about what are your opportunities both now and in the next 3 years, because that's going to inform your training plan. And the same for the threats. So what are your competitors doing? Perhaps your competitors have got skills that you don't have, or perhaps even your competitors are poaching your staff in some cases as well. So what are they doing differently that you could learn from? So it is quite simply just that kind of that SWOT, but don't forget to think about future and current. So what's our SWOT look like now? What might it look like in 3 years' time? And that will then inform, as I sort of touched on there, either a training need that might be for yourself as the leader, it might be for your team, or it might identify actually we need to hire in perhaps some more freelancers, or we need to hire some brand new people to fill those gaps. So it's really important to step back, think about your own business objectives before jumping into a training plan, because otherwise you're not going to get the benefit of training unless it's really linked to what you're doing as a business.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about sort of our setting, things that we find quite useful is when we're doing things like performance appraisals or, quarterly reviews. Speak to your people, because actually they're the ones on the front line. They're the ones that are dealing with the tech that you've got, or are dealing with the customers, or maybe handling customer inquiries about, do you do X, Y, or Z, that can, highlight where there are places where either you've got inefficiencies or there are opportunities to improve your business. So absolutely, things like speaking to people, looking at business plan. So lots that you can do there to find out where you need to address training.
Definitely. And we always talk to our employers about this, of trying to create that culture of communication and the culture of, we talk about development, and it's okay to express that you've got a development need. Of course, it's encouraged, having those conversations at appraisals, but also just having them more informally about actually, what do you want to do in 3 years' time? Or have you ever thought about a different area of the business? And sometimes you'll be really surprised at what somebody might come up with. Actually, they've always been really passionate about becoming an accountant or something that they just never done before, if you have those conversations. So I think that's absolutely right. Speak to people, see what they're crying out for, and also what they're really passionate about, so that you can think about where you position people in the future.
Yeah. In terms of training, obviously, I mean, things have been really tight for businesses for several years, really, with, inflation and COVID and all the challenges that businesses have had to face. And naturally, as a business owner, you try to look where you can cut costs, and often the things that go first are marketing and training. Why would you say to our listeners training is actually worth definitely hanging on to and making sure you continue with that investment?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Training is often one of the first things to go. It's often one of the smallest budgets to start with, or a lot of businesses don't actually have a budget. It is more just on a case-by-case basis. The very best training, or actually any training that you're doing, should, as I said, be linked to your business objectives, and therefore should have a return on investment. So if you can show that it's got that return on investment, of course, it's easier to make the case for budget. So it would be a bit of a false economy to sort of batten down the hatches and say we're not doing any more training, because of the impact that will then have on your business. So will it perhaps increase turnover of staff? It will definitely reduce the morale of people and probably reduce their efficiency in doing what they're doing. So when we're looking at that training plan, it should all be about actually what's going to be the benefit of this training. So perhaps you're training on a new system to be more efficient. Perhaps you're learning about digital marketing because you want to grow more sales, and that's going to help your bottom line. Or perhaps you as a leader want to develop your leadership skills so that you can actually rise above perhaps all of the nitty gritty things that you get involved in and help to take your business to the next level. So training should absolutely have a return on investment. It shouldn't really just be a nice to have it would be quite nice for everybody to go on a training course. But that's the social side. That's another piece altogether. That is very, very important for team building. But training should have that return. And if you if you're strategic about what you do, the type of learning that you do, then you should be able to get that return. And there's lots of low cost ways of training, of course, as well, which we can talk about. So it doesn't have to be, a really glitzy away day or an outward bound or that kind of training. It can be as simple as, listening to podcasts like this, going on YouTube, going on, there's a great platform called Future Learn, which has lots of free courses. I think if you do the training in a planned way and then you put it into practice and reflect on it, you can actually get really big benefits just from doing very low cost types of training as well.
Yeah. And there is funded training out there too that businesses can access.
Yeah, so we deliver lots of funded training through the government. So there's a lot of different avenues open at the moment, particularly over the last couple of years for small businesses and large businesses. So you've probably heard of apprenticeships. That's a really important part of the government's strategy.
Yeah.
A lot of people think of apprenticeships just being for trades, which absolutely they still are. But there's also apprenticeships available for most different professions now. So there are accountancy apprenticeships, there's marketing, there's data, there's IT. Pretty much any profession that you can think of has now been mapped to an apprenticeship. And they're not just entry level, they're actually all the way up to degree level now or master's level, which is the level 7. So apprenticeships are a really interesting funded training option where small businesses can bring in new people, bring in new talent, and have the support of a training provider alongside them, because that's often the most daunting thing about either taking your first employee or perhaps taking somebody that's a bit less experienced. If you're not used to having somebody that's perhaps a bit younger or new, by doing it through an apprenticeship, you're going to have that trainer alongside you. It's 3-way. So you're there as the employer, absolutely crucial to the journey, but the trainer is going to be there to give them the knowledge and skills they need, and also be a coach, a mentor, help them with their well-being, be a sounding board. So it's a kind of low risk way for people to take on somebody new in a new area. And you also might be wanting to take someone on in an area that you don't know anything about. So if you're taking on somebody in marketing and you've never done it before, or taking somebody, in coding and you've never done it before, by having that trainer, you can be confident, right, as long as I give them a really good job, I'm clear on what their responsibilities are, I'm going to have somebody to support me. So that is a really interesting way for people to do a very low cost training program, because for most businesses, it will either be 95% funded or in a lot of cases 100% funded, because there's a lot of big businesses who haven't spent their budget for apprenticeships. So they basically pledge that and say, if you're a small business and you want to do apprenticeships, you can use our budget for it. So there's no cost of the training. There's the apprenticeship wage. So you have the option of paying the individuals a slightly lower wage, which is £6.40 at the moment.
Yep.
So we do encourage people to try to pay as much as they would normally pay, or certainly what they can afford. But if that's not possible, there is that as an opportunity. And there are also other financial incentives, like, for example, there's no national insurance to pay for apprentices in their first year, which is, with the changes that are coming to national insurance, is a really big bonus for people. So, that's just one of the options if you're looking at funded training. And it goes back to that kind of skills plan of what skills do we need? Should we train somebody into a new area, or could we recruit somebody through an apprenticeship? And there's lots of other pieces that we can come on to as well, like skills boot camps, higher technical qualifications, different college courses. So, there's lots of funded opportunities out there. And sometimes it's small businesses and large businesses just need a bit of support to sort of wade through all of the information.
Yeah. So let's assume hypothetically that I'm running my own small business and I've decided that some of my staff need some training. What are the classic mistakes that I would need to avoid when arranging training?
Yeah, so one of them that we see quite a lot is that there's lots of excitement at the start of any training program. So as if you're the employer, you've got, the member of the team or teams that are going to go onto it, everybody's bought in and motivated. But the mistake is to actually assume that everything's just going to run smoothly and I'll check in again at the end. So if it is a longer type program over a number of months or a year, the more that employer and line manager can be involved, the better, because it's
Yeah.
One, it's going to help the learner be really motivated because they're going to see actually, all right, well, my boss is still really interested in me doing this. But also really importantly, then the employer can pick up on any issues and also feed into the training that's happening. So if I've learned about a certain topic that month, so I've just learned about search engine optimization, I can think, oh, perfect. Actually, I've got something that Natalie can be working on over the next few months. So it's really important for any kind of training journey that, you know, all of those parties are engaged. So it could be the line manager. In bigger organizations, you might give that individual a mentor as well, so that they've got a kind of sounding board to say, well, you know, this is what I'm learning. What do I want to do next? So that's one of the things we see quite a bit, where we have to try and keep that motivation going longer, because that really helps the individual. And it's the classic change curve of the individual will be really excited to start with, then they might lull, you know, have a bit of a lull. And the trainer should be there to make sure that they keep that motivation to the end. So that's one of them. I've already talked a little bit about it, but, you know, investing in training where there's no clear link to your business objectives, or not a clear link to some kind of return on investment, that will usually lead to a bit of, you know, the staff might love it and be very excited, but actually as a business, it's not really helping you to move forward. So that would be another. And then one that we do see is just thinking around trying to have a kind of one size fits all approach to training. So we've got an e-learning course, everybody has to go on it, but not everybody learns in the same way. Of course, we're all different, and also different topics lend themselves to different types of training. So it's not always right to just have only one way to learn something. And it's, as you mentioned, you know, it's just about having those open conversations with people about actually what's worked for you in the past, what would you like to see in the future, what can we lay on? And even if you do have to have a kind of one size fits all, because everybody's coming in a room and learning together, if you can put in those reflection points, so perhaps a month after and 3 months after, where they're actually, you're catching up with them to see, have they put it into practice? That could be a really good way to then identify any other needs or tailor it to individuals. So yeah, we wouldn't recommend that kind of one size fits all for everybody, and we've got so many new tools available to us now, haven't we? Of, you know, you can listen to audio to learn, you can be hands-on actually coding or doing data analytics, or you might actually teach others. Some people learn by teaching others, so you might, you know, that could be a useful exercise with team members as well, if actually can they pass on their knowledge to somebody new.
Yeah, and I suppose when you decide to invest in that money, it's making sure that, like you say, you get the value for money. So, you know, those checking in, have the things people learned been embedded into the company, you're getting the benefit from it, you know, because it's very easy to slip back into new, you know, old ways of doing things.
Yes.
You know, I'm thinking when we've had training in the past on new software, you know, and it doesn't quite do what you want. So you just think, oh, you try and take shortcuts. So making sure that it's embedded, that you've got full value for money from it. And I think another sort of point for me is the thing that actually, the mistake of seeing learning as a one-off exercise is that actually it's a business evolves all the time, things are changing all the time, so your learning needs to be continuous in some respect, that remember that what's the next step, you know. So are we still keeping up 12 months down the line? Is you know, that we've learned still working for us? So that's another important lesson, I think.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one of the benefits that we always talk about with employers of apprenticeships, is that given their nature, you know, they have to be over a year, which can be daunting, but the real benefit of that is that the learning is going to be embedded. So they're going to get the knowledge, but they're also going to get the skills, and they're going to be asked to demonstrate the skills. So they have to show their trainer that they know what they're doing. They have to show in their endpoint assessment that they know what they're doing. So by its nature of being a bit longer, it gives time to put it into practice. And as you say, unless you go away and do what you've learned quite quickly afterwards, it's probably not going to sink in and be used. So I totally agree.
Yeah. In terms of training when you're doing it in-house, which many small businesses will have to do, you know, you might have a business owner and you've taken on someone to do sales for you because the business is growing, and you sort of train them in the processes that you're using, or your customers. What tips do you have for people when they're doing in-house training to make sure that they get it right?
Yeah, so the beauty of doing it in-house, of course, is that you're going to really understand that company's objectives. So if you do bring somebody in from the outside, it's important that they understand the culture and what you're trying to get out of it. So that they've really understood, the way that people want to learn and what you as the business owner is trying to get out of it. You might actually use people within your team that are not expert trainers as well. And you see that quite a lot where you've got small businesses. So they're expert in their field, but maybe they're not trainers. But we can all learn different, quite simple techniques to make sure that training is effective. So it's some of the pieces I've mentioned already of making sure that the training is planned. You're doing it for a reason and people understand that reason. The training is practical. So if you can make it as practical as possible, if you're doing it in-house, that's the beauty, is that you can use your real systems, real examples, real customers. So try to make it relatable and also try to make it practical. So all of the courses that we run, there'll be some theory and learning the skills, but actually the quicker you can then go away and say, right, we're going in a breakout room and you all need to analyze this data or create a plan for this. So you can do that with your internal training of just like setting a quick practical task. One, because it embeds the knowledge, but also because it will flesh out those issues. So if people have got questions, they're much more likely to raise them once they've all gone away and had a go and thought, actually, that didn't quite work for me. Or what did you do? Because, that doesn't apply to my role. So I think the more practical that you can make it, the better. And then always take feedback. That's so crucial as a trainer or, as a business owner, is, ideally take some anonymous feedback at the end about what people got out of it. How would they like to see it differently in the future? And set some actions. So make sure it's really clear of, okay, we've done this today. This is what's going to happen in the future. But over the next month, we want you to go and do X, Y, Z, or all the individuals can set that plan. So making, it's very, very similar kind of theory. But I think the benefit of doing it internally, like I say, is just that you'll have that insight into the business and you can make it really, really practical and relatable.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, the beauty of it is that you can check understanding as you go. You're then, that someone sat across the desk from you, so you can make sure that they understood what you mean. And I think another sort of useful tip that I would give is that actually there's tools now that can help you sort of make learning that people can go back to in their own time. So we use Looms quite a lot when we're doing things, we'll have a video chat, they'll talk through how you do something, but we'll record it at the time and you've got a record of it and you can go back and go, I need to do this and I need to do that, and then that will work. So that's another tip that I would share from personal experience actually when you're training people, is to either have notes or to have a kind of record that people can go back to refresh themselves, because sometimes you feel like a bit of a plum going, oh, sorry, I've forgotten how to do that. So if you can self-serve the answer to yourself, that's another good tip, really.
Definitely, yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about Fairport, because you've already mentioned apprenticeships in passing, but you're heavily involved really in apprenticeships, and they've become much more popular in recent years. I mean, I've got children that are the age now where they've got that option of, am I going to go the university route or am I going to go apprenticeship? And so it's been something that's talked about quite frequently in our house. So apprenticeships in terms of how they work. Can you explain a little bit to listeners about apprenticeships and how that could work for a small business?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, apprenticeships are available in all different professions. So the first step would be to identify which one you want to do. You can go on the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, where they have occupational maps to show the different levels and also the knowledge and skills that are within those. So that's a good first port of call, or also speaking to a training provider about actually to advise on, perhaps you don't know what skills you need and you need to do a bit more of a business needs analysis. But that's the first step, working out which apprenticeship really suits you. And then you can find a training provider. So they need to be on the register of approved training providers. So on that same site, if you choose the right apprenticeship for you, it will give you a list of those that are near you, and you can see reviews, you can see the other courses that they do, you can see their Ofsted reports. So training providers are just like schools, where we get inspected by Ofsted frequently, and they check the quality of apprenticeships, and we're measured on the success of our apprenticeships. So they have to be of a certain quality to be delivered as an apprenticeship. So that's the first step, really. Identify your course, identify your training provider, and then the training provider will be able to advise you on the financials of things. As I mentioned, there's some financial incentives. If you hire a younger person, for example, some businesses can get £1,000 cash incentive. National insurance can be waived. There's the national minimum wage. So do make sure that you get the advice on that, because that's really, really important to get that right. And then it depends who you're training. So a lot of businesses will actually train an existing member of staff, but they're using the apprenticeship route. So when people hear the term apprentice, it sounds like it is this new person that's coming in and they've never done it before, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be somebody that you've moved into a new role or recently promoted. So you identify the person, but if you did want to recruit somebody new, there is a special government site called Recruit an Apprentice, where you can actually publish that nationally, and it can help you to kind of boost your recruitment process. So, but we would absolutely still recommend doing it through your usual job board, social media, however you normally recruit, because it's very localized, isn't it, in terms of actually finding the person that's right for you. So that's the process you go through. But your training provider will be there to advise you on the training plan and what's going to be set up. So as an employer, you've got that responsibility to pay their wage, and they need to typically be about at least 30 hours a week or full time in order to do that apprenticeship. So you need to pay their wage, you need to pay their tax as any other employee, give them holiday, give them sick pay. So they are, of course, just the same as any other employee. But what they will have is time off for training. So the way that works, the reason that you can get funding for an apprenticeship is that the person has to have what we call off-the-job training. So they're going to be, the brilliant part of an apprenticeship is that you're getting into a real job, you're getting a real wage, and that's why they're also appealing for those school leavers that you've mentioned. But the employer can't get that for free. They have to give the person the training. So
that's the trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. That's the trade-off. And they'll have to have the equivalent of 6 hours a week for training. So that might literally be 6 hours every Friday, or it might be a bit more one week and less the next. But your training provider will work with you as an employer to actually understand what's what are the ins and outs of your business, what would be the best way to fit this training in, where are they going to learn, how are they going to learn, and how are we going to visit them. So you create that plan, and that will take the learner all the way through the knowledge that they need for that particular profession. So if we're talking about a business administration apprentice, for example, which is a very general apprenticeship, which can be really useful in small businesses because it's lots of different things. So they touch on organizational systems, then they'll be touching on finance, then they'll be touching on customer communication. So they're going to get all of that knowledge. There's also the skills and behaviors aspects of it as well, which is really important for an apprenticeship. So they, as I mentioned, they're putting it into practice, they're embedding it, they've got to demonstrate it. So you as the employer need to help them to have opportunities to put those things into practice and to demonstrate them. But the trainer's there to support you and to support the apprentice all throughout. Typically, there'll be sort of 15 months or 18 months in length, and then some of the more technical ones could be 2 years or over, but that's all available on the IFAPE website that I mentioned, the Institute for Apprenticeship. So that's the steps to taking them on. And we've talked a little bit about what makes a good apprenticeship employer. So it is somebody that's going to take an interest in their training, somebody that's going to be wanting to invest in them for the future. And they're going to develop so many new skills that they absolutely should be contributing to your business. And you can tailor that apprenticeship by working closely with your training provider. If you've got a new system that you're rolling out in 6 months, actually that could be one of the projects that your apprentice is working on, so that for their evidence. Or actually, if you've got a particular issue in your business, you could set them off in going to solve it. So the more that the employer is involved in the apprenticeship, the better.
So you can tailor it to some extent to what the business needs as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to cover, they have to tick off the knowledge areas, they have to tick off the skills, but there's so many different ways that they could demonstrate those things. And a project is a really good way to make sure that the learner and the employer is very engaged in what they're doing.
One of the other things I wanted to ask you about is your boot camps. I've come across these before, but I wondered if you could explain to our listeners how the boot camps work and what kinds of things you can learn on a boot camp.
Yeah, so it's not out in muddy fields. That's the name they've chosen. But yeah, it's a skills boot camp is a new government initiative, or newer than apprenticeships. They've been going about 3 years, but will continue to grow, and there's more funding going behind it every year. There's a few different objectives of boot camp. So one of them is getting people into new jobs, so unemployed people into new jobs. But if we think about your audience, there's also funding for small businesses and for self-employed people to develop their own skills. So they've actually chosen subjects that are going to help businesses to grow. So there's lots of green skills boot camps, for example, because that's such an important part of our economy. There's lots of skills boot camps in AI. Some of the ones that we're working on with individuals who are self-employed or actually just smaller businesses are digital marketing, which has been incredibly popular. And the beauty of the skills bootcamp is that the training provider is there for the period that you're with them, which is shorter. So it's typically 12 weeks or 14 weeks, a day a week. So you're not spending as much time as you would do on a longer training program, but it's intensive and it's giving you the skills that you need to grow your business. So for the digital marketing one, the training provider is there to support you, but they will also stay with you and support you for 6 months afterwards. So if you're a self-employed person, you come on a digital marketing course, learn all the skills that you need. So you're learning about content planning and video and paid ads and social media. At the end of the course, because we practice what we preach, you have to have an action plan at the end. So you'll have a marketing plan. And then your training provider will support you for up to 6 months afterwards to check in that you've actually put it into place. And we actually are incentivized. So we get paid when somebody grows their business. So it really just works for both sides. So we're there to make sure that you've not just got a theoretical plan, but actually you're going to go away and get that new customer. And we've got loads of brilliant success stories recently with the small businesses that we work with. We've had personal trainers, we've had dog groomers, solicitors, accountants, all different kinds of businesses. And they come together to learn, which is a brilliant part of the boot camp, is that actually you can have conversations a bit like we're having, where if you talk into someone in a different industry, you can suddenly have a light bulb about your own business and think, oh, they're doing something completely different to me, but I can learn from them. So they come together as this group, learn together, challenge each other, solve problems together. And then at the end of it, they've all got a very individual marketing plan. So that's the skills boot camps. As I mentioned, that's just a digital marketing one. There's the same for data, for coding, for green, but they're all along the same lines, where the government have said either it should help you to get into a new role, or if you're a small business owner, it should be helping you to grow. So you can put your employees on it to learn new skills. And that's a shorter way of doing it than an apprenticeship, or you can actually go on it yourself. And there's, as always, the government funding is, there's all these terms, but as a simple summary for it, if you don't have any employees, you can get onto a skills bootcamp for free, and it would be 100% funded, which is brilliant. So it's just, of course, a really low cost way, if you've got the time to do it, to grow.
Actually, it sounds, in terms of commitment, actually, as a small business, that if it's 1 day a week, actually, if you're getting it for free and it's only 1 day a week, and it's for a 12-week period, what have you, that's an easier thing to commit to than thinking, I'm going to sign up for 18 months to do an apprenticeship, or to, it's bite-sized, it's manageable as a small business.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And people often choose, the right time for their business. So they'll know that they've got a peak time where, they might be on holiday, but, we've got a peak trading time. That's not the right time for me, but can I book on a bit later? So it is a day a week. It is manageable, but we all know that your small business can sometimes be an 80-hour week rather than 4 days. So we work with our small businesses to kind of get them onto the right
to make it work for them.
So it's going to work for them for sure. And then as I mentioned, so bigger businesses can put people on it as well, and the government will fund 90% of it. and you as a business need to pay typically about £300 or £400 for that contribution. And when you think that you're going to get probably 14 full day sessions with a real trainer and meeting like 10 other business owners and getting to know those business owners, that's quite a small investment. So we're really happy that the government are getting behind small businesses and helping them to grow.
So one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I'm not familiar with them at all, is higher technical qualifications. Can you explain to us what they are and how they work?
Yeah, so a higher technical qualification is a new badge that the government are giving to some diplomas at level 4 and 5. So a level 4 or 5 is just below degree level, if you're not familiar with those levels. They're aimed at people over 18, so they could be school leavers, but they could, they could be somebody in their 50s, 60s. Anybody that wants to get these diplomas, the difference between them and the other types of training I've been talking about is that they're quite assignment and assessment led. So they are more of that traditional academic learning where you're working towards a diploma. So they will suit people who really like getting their heads down, writing assignments, learning the theories, and then they are assessed by an external awarding body and marked as reports and assignments. So you get higher technical qualifications, again, in loads of different subjects. So we're doing a leadership and management qualification with the CMI, which is for aspiring managers who want to get into that. So as I mentioned, it's theoretical. You're learning all those theories of management, which oftentimes, people move into management roles because they're really good at their job or they're running a business, but they've probably not had much time to step back and think about what makes a good leader, what frameworks can I use, how can I get the best from people. So it's that kind of theory. And they're also, clues in the title, there's some technicalities to them as well of coding, data analytics, website design, lots of different types. And if people have identified their business needs, they'll probably find that there is an HTQ that can suit them. So the difference is that theoretical academic rigor to it, and also another difference is that you can do an HTQ in a role that you're not currently in. So when we were talking about the apprenticeship, you can only do a finance apprenticeship if you're in a finance role, or you can do the marketing one you're in a marketing role. But an HTQ is really good if you're, a member of your team or yourself wants to upskill to the next level, but they're not quite ready. So we've got quite a lot of people on our data analytics course who they want to retrain and go into a whole new field. So this is perfect for them because they can do the diploma, prove to employers that they're ready for the next stage and get a new job. And you could do the same with your own team, of course, where data analytics is so important to
everything.
There's so much data being created every moment as we speak. So, even for the very smallest of business, if you can get a handle on that data and spot trends and grow your sales. So we are seeing people who are saying, actually, I've got an administrator, but I'm going to put them on a data course so that they can actually stretch themselves and move into new responsibilities.
So we've talked about it briefly, but why do business owners need to think particularly about their own training beyond, the training they're giving to their own employees? Yeah,
so it can be very easy if there are cost challenges to think about actually, I'll forego doing any training. And also, I think it's just the nature of running a business where you do get, you get swept up in all of the day-to-day because you've got customers to deal with, you're invoicing, you've got emails coming out of your ears, your social media is hopefully flying. And so it is often really difficult to step back and reflect on your own needs. And also, if you're not in a corporate environment, there's probably nobody doing an appraisal for you or setting your personal development plan for the year. So January would typically be the time when you're saying, actually, what do I want to achieve? And a business owner, what we tend to see is the business owner will be setting brilliant targets for their business of sales and growth and, new markets, but they would generally not be thinking about, well, actually, what do I need as a leader? So I want to develop my communication, or I'd quite like to learn about finance. So I think as a small business owner, it's really important to just try and take a little bit of time to step back and reflect and try and step away from the business. That's why that group setting does work quite well, because it's almost forcing you to go out of the business. So you're not going to be distracted by your team or customers. And also you're accountable to that group, aren't you? Where we're coming together every Monday and we're going to be sharing our ideas, and people definitely get that time to step back and think about themselves and not just
it's that reflection time.
Definitely. So you can do that SWOT on yourself. Absolutely. What are the skills that you need now? What are the skills that you're going to need in the future, depending on what you want to do for your business? And it works just the same as any other employee. Even if you're the only employee, you're going to feel more motivated if you feel that you are stretching yourself and progressing. You know, it's just one of those innate human needs, is that we want to be progressing in our skill set and furthering ourselves. So you should be helping your own engagement in your business by doing that training as well.
Yeah. By improving yourself, you're improving your business, I suppose, is the way to look at it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, for lots of people running their own business, lots of people these days fall into business because they've started a side hustle, and then they start to enjoy it and the business gets bigger and bigger. And they've come maybe from an employed background, and they've always had someone else to worry about the invoicing, or someone else worrying about, is the website properly optimized for SEO? And when you're on your own, suddenly you're responsible for all of those things. And I think unless you've kind of stepped back and looked at what's going well, what's not going well, and where you want to be, at the end of this year or at the end of your financial year, it can be very easy to overlook things that are unknowingly holding your business back from its full potential.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that a lot, and we all do that. I do that as a business owner, of trying to do everything myself and trying to learn every system. By doing that business needs analysis or that SWOT, you absolutely, you should identify those things that you are good at, the value add that you bring. And that, there might be things that you think, actually, I could upskill here and I'll go and get the training. But actually, if you're going to grow your business, it can be really, really impactful for you to think, well, actually, I'm never going to love invoicing. I'm never going to love whatever it might be. There are people out there who will love doing that. So that's a lot of times how we help people bring in their first employee or their first apprentice, where they can actually think, well, I want to focus more of my time on my strengths, and bring in somebody who's got fantastic strengths there. And, if you bring, it doesn't have to be a younger person, but oftentimes it is. And they're going to bring lots of new ideas and energy and excitement, and you'd have a training provider working with them if they're on an apprenticeship. So it's not quite so scary to say, well, actually, what am I going to do with them every day? What am I going to, how am I going to teach them? So I think that's really, really important for an individual to think, what do I need to develop for myself? But actually, what does the business need? And it's not always just more hours, because we just run out.
Yeah. If only we could clone ourselves.
That would be the ideal. But maybe next time we speak, that will be what my suggestion.
That will be the next development. Well, it's moved beyond AI. There's loads of stuff there, Natalie, that I'm sure readers will find really useful. If possible, and it's a big ask, can you boil that down to your top 3 training tips?
So it's all the things that we've talked about. So my first would be absolutely to have a plan for your training. So to look at actually your business objectives, your strengths and weaknesses, to set a quite specific plan. And it doesn't have to be a grand plan. It can be one piece of paper, but to do it, purposefully. So set a training plan purposefully. The second would be around making sure that you've got time to put into practice what you've learned, so that it's really embedded. So reflecting afterwards and having time to practically go after what you've learned. And then the third one would probably be thinking about those learning styles that I talked about. So do you want to be writing assignments, because that's actually how you embed the information and learn? Do you want to be as part of a group, because actually talking and socializing is going to really keep you motivated and going to engage you? Or do you want bite size, because perhaps you don't have the time to dip out of your business so much, so you might just want something bite size? But as long as you do it deliberately, even just half an hour of a podcast on your morning walk, you're going to learn a huge amount as long as you take the time to reflect it and embed it. So there's hundreds of others, but those would be my top 3.
Fantastic. And finally, before you go, can you tell listeners where they can find more information about the courses that Fairport are running and where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Natalie Cahill. You can find me on LinkedIn, or if you look onto our website, so Fairport, which is spelled Fareport. So it's an amalgamation of Fareham and Portsmouth. So fairport.co.uk is our website. And if you search for Fairport Apprenticeships, Fairport Skills Bootcamps, you will find us and all the details. And of course, if you contact me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to answer any questions about the apprenticeships that we do, but also that others do, because there are hundreds and lots of different things available.
That's fantastic. And we'll make sure that we include links to all of those in the summary notes that will accompany this. So thank you very much for your time. It's been great to chat to you.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was fascinating. Natalie shared loads of great information there on things like how to identify your training needs, how to make sure the training is effective, and some options for funded, unfunded and in-house training. Whether you're a sole trader or a business with dozens of employees, I bet you there are areas of your business that can be improved by training. For example, you might join a boot camp to boost your own digital marketing skills, or you could take on an apprentice so you can train a new financial manager or perhaps a business analyst for your business. The key seems to be objectively looking at where you or your business is right now and considering where you want to be in the future. Assessing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and deciding what training can help address them, and finally formulating your training plan. Providing you buy into the process and make sure the learning is embedded, you'll be well on your way to turbocharging your business. If you're enjoying the Start Your Own Business podcast, please spread the word so we can help even more business owners. You can find links to Natalie and to Fairport and all their training opportunities in the summary notes, and you'll find those at www.startyourownbusinesspodcast.co.uk. We've also pulled together some handy resources from across the donut sites that can help. Finally, I'd like to say another big thank you to Natalie for sparing her time to share her thoughts and insights today. Until next time, all the best.